In the scorching heat of a forward operating base in northern Syria, Sophia Reeves moved with quiet efficiency through the command center. Intelligence reports scrolled across her screen as she analyzed potential threats to the base. At first glance, most soldiers saw just another analyst. A slender woman with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her uniform crisp despite the desert conditions. Few knew that beneath her unassuming demeanor lay the training of one of America's most elite warriors. 3 years earlier, Sophia had graduated at the top of her SEAL class, personally mentored by Colonel Merrill Tengestal, the legendary Special Operations Commander. Her combat record remained classified, a deliberate choice to allow her to move undetected in sensitive operations. Now, as tensions escalated in the region, her unique position as an undercover operator provided crucial advantages. Lieutenant Colonel James Harrington, the base commander, who had served alongside Audie Murphy's grandson, was one of the few who knew her true capabilities. He valued her insights but maintained the facade that she was simply an intelligence specialist. Their professional relationship was built on mutual respect and the understanding that her cover remained essential to ongoing operations. "Ma'am, the reconnaissance team is returning," announced Private Jenkins, sliding a tablet across her desk. "Captain Miller's squad is reporting unusual movement in the eastern sector." Sophia nodded, studying the footage. Something felt wrong about the patterns she observed, the seemingly random movements of local shepherds that, to her trained eye, suggested surveillance. She recognized tactics similar to those she'd encountered during operations with Lieutenant Susan Ann Cuddy's Specialized Reconnaissance Unit. "I'd like to brief Captain Miller's team before they head out again," she said, rising from her desk. Jenkins hesitated. Captain Miller specifically requested Lieutenant Wallace handle the intelligence briefing. "I'm sure he did," Sophia replied evenly, gathering her notes. Captain Miller's Special Forces team had arrived 2 weeks ago, all decorated soldiers with impressive records, but with the arrogance that sometimes accompanied such credentials. They'd made little effort to hide their dismissal of the base's intelligence team, particularly Sophia. In the briefing room, Miller and his 5-man team lounged in chairs, their posture relaxing when Sophia entered instead of Wallace. "Gentlemen, I've identified concerning patterns in the eastern sector." Miller exchanged glances with his second-in-command. "With all due respect, ma'am, we've been running operations in hostile territory for years. These are just local herders. These movement patterns match those preceding the attack on Forward Base Epsilon last month," Sophia continued, undeterred. "I recommend postponing tomorrow's mission until we can verify." "We don't need advice from someone who's never seen actual combat," Miller interrupted. "The colonel approved this operation and we're moving forward at 0500. Sophia met his gaze steadily. "Your call, Captain." As she left the room, the communication system crackled with an urgent message from the perimeter guards. Unusual vehicle movements had been spotted approaching from multiple directions. Lieutenant Colonel James Harrington appeared beside her, his expression grim. "Looks like your instincts were right, Reeves. We may have a situation developing." Sophia nodded, feeling the familiar calm that preceded combat. "Permission to arm and prepare defensive positions, sir?" "Granted," he replied quietly, "but maintain your cover unless absolutely necessary." As the alarm began to sound, Sophia knew the coming hours would test not just her combat skills, but her ability to lead soldiers who had no idea who she really was. The weight of her sidearm against her hip provided a familiar comfort as she moved toward the armory, mentally preparing for what was coming. The first explosion rocked the eastern perimeter at 0247 hours, sending a plume of dust and debris into the night sky. Sophia was already moving, her analyst persona shed like an unnecessary weight as she sprinted toward the command center. 3 more blasts followed in rapid succession, a coordinated attack designed to create maximum confusion. "Communications are down," Lieutenant Colonel Harrington announced grimly as she entered. "We're cut off from headquarters, and the QRF is at least 2 hours out." Satellite imagery on the main screen showed what Sophia had feared, at least 30 hostiles approaching from multiple directions, using the cover of darkness and the confusion of the initial attack. This wasn't a random strike, it was a calculated assault by experienced fighters. "Captain Miller's team is pinned down in the eastern sector," reported Sergeant Hayes, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. "They were conducting a perimeter check when the first IED detonated." Sophia assessed the tactical situation with cold precision. "We need to secure the armory and establish defensive positions at these 3 points," she said, marking locations on the digital map. Several officers exchanged skeptical glances at taking orders from an intelligence analyst. "Do as she says," Harrington commanded, his tone brooking no argument. "Reeves, take Corporal Jackson and secure our communications equipment." As Sophia and Jackson moved through the darkened corridors, the sound of small arms fire intensified outside. They encountered Private Chen, a communications specialist trained under Lieutenant Susan Cuddy's protocols, attempting to establish a backup channel. "The main array is down, but I might be able to rig something with the portable units," Chen explained, her hands steady despite the chaos. "Do it," Sophia ordered. "Jackson, cover that entrance." A sudden burst of gunfire erupted from the adjacent hallway. Jackson fell, a bullet catching him in the shoulder. Sophia moved with fluid precision, drawing her sidearm and eliminating 2 attackers with controlled double taps before they registered her presence. "Stay with him," she instructed Chen, pressing a field dressing into the young woman's hands. "I'm heading for the armory." Moving through the base like a ghost, Sophia eliminated 3 more hostiles with silent efficiency. The training she'd received from Colonel Eileen Collins, hours spent perfecting the art of close-quarters combat, guided every movement. When she reached the armory, she found it under siege, with Captain Miller and 3 of his men trapped inside, exchanging fire with attackers through the reinforced doorway. "We need to fall back to a more defensible position," Miller shouted when he spotted her. "Where's Wallace? We need tactical support." "Wallace is down," Sophia replied, dropping to one knee and taking out an enemy fighter with a precise shot. The shot, made in near darkness at an extreme angle, left Miller momentarily speechless. Using the momentary lull, Sophia accessed the weapons locker, selecting an M4 carbine and tactical gear with practiced familiarity. Miller watched with growing confusion as she moved with assured confidence of a veteran operator. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Before she could answer, an explosion rocked the western sector. Through her comms device, Sophia heard Panic's voice say, "They've breached the command center. Colonel Harrington is down." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. With communications compromised and leadership casualties mounting, the base's fall seemed imminent. Sophia made a swift calculation. Maintaining her cover was no longer the priority. "Captain, I need your team to follow my lead," she said, checking her weapon with practiced efficiency. "Why would we? Because right now, I'm the only chance you have of getting your men out alive," she cut him off, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to command in combat situations. "We're going to retake the command center, and then we're going to show these attackers exactly why they should have chosen a different target." The skepticism in Miller's eyes remained, but the desperation of their situation left them little choice. As they prepared to move out, none of them realized that the true test of Sophia's abilities was just beginning. The command center had become a war zone, with 3 enemy combatants holding Lieutenant Colonel Harrington and the remaining staff at gunpoint. Sophia signaled Miller and his men to hold position as she assessed the situation through the partially open door. The colonel was wounded but conscious, his eyes meeting hers briefly in silent communication. "On my mark," she whispered, outlining a precise entry plan that left Miller visibly impressed despite his lingering doubts. 3, 2, 1. They breached with synchronized precision. Sophia eliminated 2 hostiles before they could react, while Miller's team neutralized the 3rd. The entire operation took less than 6 seconds. "Secure the colonel," Sophia ordered, already moving to the communications array. "Chen, status report." "Eastern and southern perimeters are compromised," Chen reported, fingers flying across the keyboard. "At least 20 hostiles still active. QRF is still 90 minutes out." Harrington struggled to sit up, pressing a hand against his bleeding side. "Reeves, it's time." She nodded, accepting both without comment. "Captain Miller," she said, her voice taking on a new authority that made everyone in the room pause. "I'm assuming tactical command. Your team will secure the wounded and establish a defensive position here while I lead a counteroffensive." Miller's expression hardened. "With all due respect, ma'am, my men aren't going to follow an intelligence analyst into combat." "I'm not an analyst," Sophia replied, checking her weapon with practiced efficiency. "I'm a SEAL combat master, trained under Colonel Merrill Tengestal. authorization code Sierra Echo Alpha Lima 937. The transformation in Miller's expression would have been comical under different circumstances. One of his men whispered, "Holy shit." "That's impossible," Miller said. "There are no female SEALs." "There are 3, and you're looking at the most decorated one. Now follow her orders, Captain." With newfound respect, Miller assembled his remaining men. Sophia outlined a bold counter-offensive strategy that would funnel the attackers into a killing zone between the barracks and the motor pool. "This is suicide," one of Miller's men muttered. "It would be," Sophia agreed, "for anyone else." The next 40 minutes became the stuff of military legend. Sophia moved through the battlefield with a lethal grace, employing tactics she learned from Janet Wolfenbarger's specialized combat manual. She anticipated enemy movements with uncanny precision, neutralizing threats before they fully materialized. Miller and his team, initially skeptical, found themselves struggling to keep pace with her. When they became surrounded near the fuel depot, Miller's face showed the first signs of genuine fear. "We're cut off. There's too many of them." Sophia checked her ammunition and smiled, a predator smile that transformed her face. "Remember, I'm a SEAL combat master. This is what I was trained for." What followed was a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. Using the environment and limited resources, Sophia created diversions that divided the enemy force, then systematically eliminated them with surgical precision. By the time the QRF arrived, the base was secure, and the remaining attackers were in retreat. Dawn broke over the desert as medical teams treated the wounded. Captain Miller approached Sophia, who was helping Chan patch up a young private. "I owe you an apology, and my life." She nodded, accepting both without comment. Lieutenant Colonel Harrington, bandaged but standing, addressed the assembled survivors. "What happened here stays classified," he announced, "but I want every one of you to remember what you witnessed today. Sometimes the most lethal weapon in America's arsenal isn't what you expect." 3 days later, as Sophia prepared to return to her regular duties, Miller found her in the mess hall. "They're offering me a new command," he said. "I requested you as my tactical advisor." "I work alone, Captain." "Not anymore," he replied. "The world's changing, and after what I saw, I'd follow you into hell itself." Sophia considered this, then offered her hand. "Then you'd better keep up." As they walked out together, the base personnel who had witnessed her in action stood a little straighter, their eyes following her with newfound respect. The legend of the SEAL combat master would remain officially classified, but among those who served that night, her legacy was already immortal.